23 minor right beard, Duke with a hat and like one finger up, Huck with the excited expression, and then Jim. And the time starts out. The time and setting of this is right after the last chapter. King and Duke, they're setting up for their next play. They would just put a big poster up, and in the beginning of the chapter, King is setting up for this play. He spends the entire morning. He's making the stage, and then Duke is going out and he's getting people to come into it. And the first night, it's great. It's jam-packed. Everyone's there. They're all super excited for this play, and they're all like so excited to see this. And then King comes out and he's wearing the most ridiculous costume ever. He's got his body painted, and it's super embarrassing, and all the people there are laughing at him. They're having a great time. And then he stands up there and he says something for like 2 minutes, and then he leaves. And all the people, they're like, "What's going on? Come on, come back out." They're kind of like confused and upset at the same time. They're like, "Get back out here. We paid like 50 cents to see this, and it lasted like 2 minutes." And he comes back out there, and they're like, "Oh, okay, all right, he's back. It's not over yet." And he's like, "No, it is over. It's come back tomorrow if you want to see it again." And they're all super upset. Like they've never been this upset before in their lives. Like they're so upset. They're like, "What? We paid like 50 cents each to see this at the door, and it lasted like 2 minutes. But we can't tell everyone that these guys are scammers because they'll laugh at us and we'll be like the laughing stock of the town. So how about instead of telling our neighbors that these guys are scammers, let's tell them that these guys were like they're the best ever and that they have to see them. So when they come to see the play, they'll also be upset, and then we'll all be fools, and then we'll all be fine. We'll all be equal." And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's a great idea. Sounds amazing." So the second day, it's completely full again, but with new people. They're all extremely excited this time because of what their neighbors said and the posters that were put up. They're having a great time. They're about to see this play. They're all like, "Ah, yeah." And then they see the king. He steps out again. He's wearing the same costume. He's painted again. They all laugh at him. They're all having a great time. They're like, "Man, our friends, they told us to come see this play, and they were right." King, he does the same thing. He talks for 2 minutes, and then he leaves. And the people, they have the same, kind of thing going on. They're like, "What? Get back out here. Like, this can't be it. Our friend said it was amazing." He comes back out, and he's like, No, that's it. That was the amazing part. Bye." And then they're so upset again. They're so upset their hats come off. They're all completely upset. They're like, "What? We've been played for fools. These guys, they took our money, and our neighbors told us that this would be great, and they lied to us. How could they do that?" And they're so upset, and they all kind of hatch this plan to get them back on the third day. And so the third day comes, it's packed again. It's completely packed. All the people have already seen the play once, so they're all people that have been there, and they all know what's going on, and they have eggs and their rotten zucchinis. And Huckleberry and Duke, they notice this, and they're like, "Man, these guys, they smell pretty weird, and they're kind of acting shifty. So, like, what should we do, Duke?" And Duke's like, "All right," and he pays a guy like a nickel to watch the door for him. And then they both just sprint out of there. They're gone. They're not coming back. And they leave all these guys sitting there saying, Alright, so after Huck and Duke run away from the theater, they run up to their raft and they meet up with Jim. And then Huck is thinking, "Oh man, I feel so sorry for poor old King. We left him back there. He's going to get absolutely just destroyed by all those people. They're going to throw a lot of stuff at him." He's a little sad. At the same time, he's kind of thinking, he kind of deserves it a little bit. But then wham! King's there at the raft, and he crawls out of a bush or something, and he's like, "Hey there, I'm here. I was never at the theater." And he says to them, he says, "Well, Duke, how did it pan out this time?" And that quote's kind of important because it shows kind of how smart the Duke and the King are. They're not as stupid as like the townspeople that they gave him a ton of money and they lied to their friends. But he knew that this was going to happen, and so did the Duke. And that's why he was just sitting out here waiting for it to all pan over. And then after they all meet up, they swim out on their raft out for a long time, and they make sure they're not like close to the city at all. And then they just keep, they talk, and then they start to go to bed. And then Huck and Jim, they go to bed under this tree, and for a while they start talking, and then Jim is like, I don't know about these guys. They're not like the stories that you told me about, King and Dukes before. They're not as nice. And then Huck's like, oh, come on, Jim. Kings and Dukes, they aren't always nice. They're kind of mean at times. And he tells him stories about, kings executing their wives and doing really bad stuff. And Jim says, I'm not sure if I can do this anymore, Huck. And this kind of shows that Jim really doesn't kind of like this life, and he doesn't really trust the king and the duke. And he kind of asks Huck, are they actually royalty? And Huck's like, yeah, they are. But at this point, Huck has his own suspicions, and he doesn't actually think that they're a king and a duke. But he decides not to tell Jim, kind of going against their friendship, and he lies to him. And then they go to bed. Huck goes to bed, and Jim takes the first watch. But then he wakes up in the morning. Huck wakes up, and he sees that Jim, he's been crying and he's been having nightmares. And he says that he's, seen this before, that Jim's had this before. And so he goes over to Jim and he says, you okay, bud? And Jim's like, oh, I've been having terrible dreams of my family back, my daughter. And he tells a story about how he told his daughter to shut the door. And then she, wasn't listening to him. She was just smiling at him with like this big, great grin. And then Jim, he got super upset and he smacked her like really hard and like across the floor. And he like left and he came back and he's like, shut the door. And then she, just like still smiling a bit. And then Jim realizes at this point that she's deaf and dumb. And then he feels really bad for hitting him. And he exclaims, forgive me, Lord. Forgive poor old Jim for hitting his child, even though she's deaf and dumb. And this is kind of important too, because it shows that Jim really doesn't like this life at all. And it ties to the quote of, he doesn't want to be here anymore. And so Huck is like, no, it's fine. And that's where the chapter ends. And so the main theme of this chapter is kind of idiocy and lying, because they're, the king, the duke, they lie to all these people, they get all their money, they're big idiots, they give like so much money to them. And then when they get back here, Huck tells Jim about all the bad things kings and dukes do, and then he decides not to tell Jim that they are actually not kings and dukes, which is kind of stupid on Huck's part and kind of, lying a lot. And it's really, Jim's kind of getting the short end of the stick, not being very, doesn't have his family anymore, he's on the run, he's not having a great time. And that's, that's where the chapter ends, at this tree. Alright, so the two literary terms in this chapter are, first of all, repetition. The repetition of the play, it happens 3 times. They're each pretty much the same, except for the third time Huck and the Duke run away. And then the last one is imagery, which the story that Jim tells at the end is pretty, what's the word?